London, 1847. Wilhelmina Mayhew stood rigid as the final pin secured her wedding gown. The ivory silk rustled as she drew a steadying breath, her reflection in the looking-glass revealing a woman composed but hollow-eyed. "You look magnificent, Miss Mayhew," her lady's maid whispered. "The Duke will be quite taken." "The Duke will be satisfied with our arrangement," Wilhelmina corrected, touching the modest pearls at her throat. "This is a marriage of convenience, nothing more." At 27, Wilhelmina had long reconciled herself to spinsterhood. Her season had passed 10 years prior, cut short by her father's shocking suicide and the revelation of his insurmountable gambling debts. Society had whispered behind fans and turned their backs as the once privileged daughter of Viscount Mayhew became a governess. "Love is a luxury afforded to those with fortune and title," Wilhelmina murmured to herself, a mantra repeated through a decade of service in other women's homes, watching their children grow while her own dreams of family withered. Until 3 months ago, when the Duke of Clarenmont had appeared at the Fairchild estate where she taught. Brandon Crawford, 8th Duke of Clarenmont, tall, imposing, and widely considered London's most enigmatic bachelor, had inexplicably offered her a solution to her precarious position. "My ward requires a motherly influence," he had stated in his library, eyes cool as he assessed her. "And I require a duchess who understands discretion and duty." A marriage would solve both matters efficiently. Wilhelmina had accepted his businesslike proposal without illusion. The Duke needed respectability and a proper influence for his young ward. She needed security and a chance to escape the tenuous existence of a governess one illness away from destitution. Love had nothing to do with it. Love was for people unburdened by scandal and poverty. The church bells chimed, startling her from her reverie. "It's time, miss," her maid said. Wilhelmina nodded, gathering her composure like armor. "Then let us proceed with the arrangement." St. George's Church in Hanover Square was filled with London's elite, their curious gazes following Wilhelmina as she walked alone down the aisle. No father to give her away, no family to stand beside her, just whispers that fluttered like moths through the congregation. "The governess," they murmured. "Mayhew's daughter. Father's scandal." Brandon stood at the altar, his broad shoulders straight beneath his impeccable tailcoat. His expression revealed nothing as she approached, though she noticed a slight tightening of his jaw. The ceremony proceeded with mechanical precision, vows exchanged with polite detachment. When the vicar instructed the Duke to kiss his bride, Wilhelmina expected the briefest touch of lips, a formality to be dispensed with quickly. Instead, Brandon's hand curled gently around her waist, drawing her closer than propriety dictated. His eyes, usually remote, searched hers with unexpected intensity before he lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was not the cold, perfunctory gesture she had anticipated. His lips were warm, lingering with a tenderness that made her pulse quicken treacherously. When he pulled away, something unreadable flickered across his face. Confused, Wilhelmina followed him down the aisle as the congregation rose, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The unexpected warmth of that kiss had cracked the certainty of her understanding. It was not part of their arrangement. "You seem troubled, Duchess," Brandon murmured as they entered the carriage. "Not troubled," she replied carefully. "Merely adjusting to my new title." "And to your new husband." His question held an edge of something she couldn't define. "Our arrangement was clearly defined, Your Grace. I anticipate no surprises." A shadow of a smile touched his lips. "Then I fear disappointment awaits you, Wilhelmina." The use of her given name, spoken in his rich baritone, sent an unwelcome shiver through her. This was dangerous territory. Emotional entanglement had not been part of their negotiation. Clarenmont House loomed on Berkeley Square, its grand facade intimidating even to those born to privilege. To Wilhelmina, who had spent a decade in other people's homes as a tolerated servant, it represented yet another place where she did not belong. "This is yours now," Brandon said as he escorted her up the marble steps. "As much as it is mine." She almost laughed at the absurdity. "I harbor no illusions about my place here, Your Grace. I am here to provide respectability and guidance for your ward." "Evelyn will adore you," he said, leading her through the entrance hall where servants lined up to greet their new duchess. "She arrives from school tomorrow." Later that evening, after a quiet dinner where conversation remained safely confined to household matters, Brandon showed her to her chambers, a sumptuous suite connected to his own by a discreet door. "I had presumed separate arrangements," she said stiffly. "Appearances must be maintained, even in private," he replied. "The servants talk." "Of course," she agreed, relief mingled with an unexpected pang of disappointment. "Good night, Your Grace." "Brandon," he corrected. "When we are alone, I would prefer you use my given name." "As you wish." "Brandon." The name felt intimate on her tongue. After he departed, Wilhelmina sat at her vanity, studying her reflection. She had secured safety and position, exactly what she had wanted. Why then did she feel this hollow ache? Because for one moment during that kiss, she had forgotten herself and imagined something more. Foolish, she whispered to her reflection. Love is not for women with pasts like yours. The arrival of 12-year-old Evelyn Collins, the Duke's ward, brought unexpected warmth to Clarenmont House. The girl was bright, curious, and surprisingly affectionate toward Wilhelmina from their first meeting. "Father never told me my new mother would be so beautiful," Evelyn declared, examining Wilhelmina with frank interest. "I'm not," Wilhelmina began, then paused at the child's crestfallen expression. "I'm honored you would think of me that way, but perhaps a stepmother's might be more fitting." Brandon, observing from across the room, interjected gently, "Evelyn, Lady Clarenmont is indeed your new mother in all ways that matter. Her modesty does her credit, but do not let it dissuade you." The tenderness in his voice when addressing the child startled Wilhelmina. This was not the reserved, pragmatic man who had proposed their arrangement. Over the following weeks, she observed similar inconsistencies. The Duke who coldly managed his vast estates transformed into a different man when with Evelyn, patient, even playful. One afternoon, Wilhelmina discovered them in the garden, Brandon demonstrating how to properly hold a croquet mallet, his deep laugh ringing out when Evelyn's ball went wildly off course. "Will you join us, Wilhelmina?" he called upon, noticing her watching from the terrace. "I wouldn't wish to intrude," she demurred. "Nonsense," he strode toward her, determination in his step. "Evelyn insists you partner with her against me." Before she could protest, he had taken her hand, his touch causing that now familiar flutter in her chest. As they played, Brandon's hand occasionally brushed hers, his gaze lingering longer than necessary. Each small contact felt deliberate, testing. That evening, the Dowager Countess of Renfield called unexpectedly, her sharp eyes assessing Wilhelmina with unconcealed curiosity. "So this is the governess who captured Clarenmont," she remarked acidly. "Society wonders what particular talent secured such an advantageous match." Brandon's hand closed over Wilhelmina's before she could respond. "My wife's talents are numerous, Lady Renfield, though her greatest virtue is her kind heart, something I believe you might study to advantage." The fierce protectiveness in his voice stunned Wilhelmina. No one had defended her since her father's death. Later, as they prepared for the Hartington ball, their first society appearance as a couple, Brandon presented her with a velvet box containing sapphires of staggering value. "These belong to the Duchess of Clarenmont," he said, fastening the necklace around her throat, his fingers lingering against her skin. "They were made for you." Our arrangement didn't include such generosity, she whispered, trembling slightly at his nearness. His eyes darkened. Perhaps our arrangement is evolving. At the ball, Brandon remained attentively by her side, his hand protectively at the small of her back as they faced society scrutiny. When they danced, he held her closer than convention allowed, his eyes never leaving hers. People are watching, she whispered. Let them, he replied. Let them see how I look at my wife. Confusion swirled within her. This possessiveness, this apparent affection, it contradicted everything she understood about their marriage. Was it merely for appearance's sake? A performance for society? The answer came unexpectedly when she overheard him speaking with his oldest friend, Lord Pembroke, in the garden. You've gone about this all wrong, Crawford, Pembroke said. The woman believes this is merely some convenient arrangement. It was the only way, Brandon replied, frustration evident. After her experiences, she would never have accepted a conventional suit. She doesn't trust affection or declarations. So instead you trapped her in marriage under false pretenses. I've loved her since I first saw her teaching at Fairchild's, Brandon admitted quietly. Her kindness, her dignity despite everything society had done to her. When I learned Fairchild planned to dismiss her, I had to act. Wilhelmina's hand flew to her mouth, stifling her gasp. She retreated silently, her mind spinning with implications. Their entire marriage was built on deception, not hers, but his. You lied to me, Wilhelmina stated coldly when they returned home, standing rigidly in his study. Our marriage was never about convenience for you. Brandon stiffened, then sighed deeply. You overheard Pembroke. You manipulated me into this marriage with talk of arrangements and duty when all along you harbored feelings. The word itself seemed dangerous to acknowledge. Would you have accepted had I declared myself, he challenged, stepping closer. Would you have believed a duke could genuinely love a disgraced governess, or would you have suspected ulterior motives? That was not your decision to make, she cried. You robbed me of choice. I gave you exactly what you claimed to want, security, position, respect, he countered. My feelings were mine to manage. And what of my feelings? Her voice broke. Did you consider I might not wish to be married to a man who what, Wilhelmina? His voice dropped, dangerous now. Who desires you? Who admires your courage? Who has spent every day since our wedding trying to show you what he couldn't say? I cannot trust this, she whispered, backing away. I cannot trust you. His face hardened. Then perhaps Lady Renfield was right, you married purely for advancement after all. The unfair accusation struck like a physical blow. Wilhelmina fled to her chambers, locking the connecting door between their rooms. Days passed in strained silence. Brandon retreated into cold formality while Wilhelmina threw herself into household duties and Evelyn's education. The girl, perceptive beyond her years, watched them with worried eyes. Are you and father quarreling? She finally asked Wilhelmina during their literature lesson. Adults sometimes have disagreements, Wilhelmina answered carefully. But you still love him, don't you? Evelyn persisted. He's different when you're not angry with him. He smiles more. It's complicated, Evelyn. Father says that's what adults say when they're afraid to be honest, the girl replied with devastating accuracy. That evening, a messenger arrived with news that shattered their uneasy peace. Brandon's cousin Walter had publicly claimed that the Duke's marriage to a common governess with a scandalous history and invalidated his right to the dukedom. The matter was to be debated in the House of Lords. He cannot possibly succeed, Wilhelmina said when Brandon informed her, his face grave. Perhaps not legally, but the scandal alone could damage Evelyn's prospects. Walter knows this. He has coveted the title since we were boys. This is my fault, she whispered. My past, my father's disgrace, no. Brandon's voice was steel. I will not allow you to shoulder blame for the ambitions of a jealous man. But if we had never married, I would have lived half a life, he interrupted fiercely. Whatever you believe about my methods, never doubt that you have brought light back into this house, for Evelyn, for the staff, for me. His raw honesty disarmed her. For the first time, Wilhelmina allowed herself to consider that his feelings might be genuine, and more terrifying still, that her own heart had betrayed her principles by falling for the man who had orchestrated their union. The hearing at the House of Lords became London's most scandalous affair. Whispers followed Wilhelmina wherever she went. Old rumors about her father's suicide resurfaced, embellished with cruel speculations about her character. On the morning of Brandon's testimony, Wilhelmina received an anonymous letter. Your husband defends you publicly while Lady Essex warms his bed privately. Ask him about their arrangement before your marriage. The elegant script struck her heart like a dagger. She had seen Brandon with Lady Essex at several functions, had noted the beautiful widow's familiarity with him. Was this another deception? Had his declarations of feeling been merely to secure her loyalty during this crisis? When confronted, Brandon's face darkened with genuine anger. Caroline Essex was indeed my mistress, before I met you. I ended our arrangement the day I decided to make you my wife. Why should I believe you? Wilhelmina demanded, the letter trembling in her hand. Because despite your determination to think the worst of my intentions, I have never lied to you. Not about matters of consequence. Our entire marriage was built on a lie. Our marriage was built on what you could accept at the time, he corrected, his voice softening. I gave you the arrangement you believed you wanted while hoping you might eventually see what I was offering beneath it. That night, alone in her bed, Wilhelmina confronted an uncomfortable truth. Her anger stemmed not from his deception but from her own fear. She had built walls around her heart for a decade, convinced that love was a luxury beyond her reach. Brandon had breached those walls, and now she stood exposed, vulnerable in ways she had sworn never to be again. The final day of the hearing arrived with crushing tension. Walter Crawford presented witnesses attesting to Wilhelmina's father's disgrace and her years spent in inappropriate familiarity with the Fairchild family. When Brandon rose to speak, the chamber fell silent. My lords, he began, his voice steady, my cousin suggests that my choice of wife somehow diminishes the dignity of the Clarenmont title. I submit that nothing has brought greater honor to my family name than my marriage to Wilhelmina Mayhew. His gaze found hers in the gallery. This woman, whom society abandoned after her father's tragedy, demonstrated more nobility without title or fortune than many who claim such privileges by birth. She educated other people's children with dignity while enduring contempt from those who should have shown compassion. He turned back to the assembled peers. If this body believes that her resilience, her intelligence, and her fundamental decency are inadequate qualifications for a duchess, then perhaps it is not my wife who fails to meet the standard, but rather the standard itself which requires examination. A murmur rippled through the chamber. No one had expected such a passionate defense. My lords, I did not marry the former Miss Mayhew for convenience, though I allowed her to believe so because of her understandable distrust of more tender declarations. I married her because I love her, completely and without reservation. A fact I have expressed inadequately, and which I now state publicly for this chamber and all of London to hear. Wilhelmina's heart pounded as whispers erupted around her. In that moment, watching Brandon stand proudly before his peers, declaring feelings she had refused to believe, something crumbled within her, the last remnants of the protective wall she had built around her heart. The ruling came swiftly. Walter's petition was rejected. But Wilhelmina barely heard the pronouncement. She was already moving, making her way down from the gallery, drawn inexorably toward the man who had risked everything, his reputation, his standing, his pride, to defend her. Brandon met her in the corridor, his eyes searching hers. "Did you mean it?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Truly?" "Every word," he replied. "I have loved you since I watched you reading poetry to the Fairchild children in the garden, laughing despite everything you had endured." "I've been a fool," she whispered. "So determined to protect myself that I couldn't see what was before me. And now?" His voice held cautious hope. "Now I see clearly." She stepped closer, propriety forgotten. "I see a man who offered me an arrangement because he knew I would accept nothing more. A man who has shown me in countless ways what he felt, while respecting my need for distance." "Wilhelmina, I love you," she interrupted, the words both terrifying and freeing. "Not for your title or your protection, but for your heart. The heart you've revealed to me day by day, even when I refuse to acknowledge it." In the middle of the House of Lords corridor, heedless of scandalized onlookers, the Duke of Clarenmont gathered his duchess into his arms and kissed her with all the passion he had restrained for months. "I should warn you," he murmured against her lips, "I have no intention of maintaining our convenient arrangement any longer." "Good," she replied, her smile radiant with newfound certainty. "I find I have developed a distinct preference for inconvenient truths." Spring, 1848. Wilhelmina stood in the Clarenmont house garden watching Evelyn chase butterflies, her hand resting protectively over her slightly rounded belly. The morning sickness had finally subsided, allowing her to enjoy the warm sunshine. Should the Duchess of Clarenmont be sitting? Brandon's voice came from behind her as his arms encircled her waist. "The Duchess of Clarenmont shall do as she pleases," she replied with a smile, leaning back against his chest. His hand covered hers over their unborn child. As she should. The past months had transformed Clarenmont House from an imposing edifice to a true home. Society had eventually tired of their scandal, particularly after the Marchioness of Hartington, impressed by Brandon's defense of his wife, had decisively welcomed Wilhelmina into her influential circle. "I received a letter from Lady Renfield today," Wilhelmina mentioned casually. "She has requested that we stand as godparents to her granddaughter." Brandon laughed softly against her hair. Remarkable how quickly principles fade when one holds the favor of the tongue. "Perhaps," Wilhelmina agreed, turning in his arms. "Or perhaps people can change when shown a different truth than the one they believed." His eyes softened as he recognized her meaning. "Are you speaking of Lady Renfield or yourself, my love?" "Both, I suppose." She traced his jaw with gentle fingers. "I spent so long believing that love was a luxury I could never afford, that happiness belonged to others. You showed me otherwise." "As did you," he countered. "I had resigned myself to a life of duty without joy until you arrived." Evelyn's delighted laugh drew their attention as she successfully caught a butterfly in her net, her face alight with triumph. "Our daughter will never doubt that she is loved," Wilhelmina said softly. "Nor will this little one." She pressed Brandon's hand more firmly against her belly. "Nor will their mother," he promised, lowering his mouth to hers in a kiss that held the same warmth as their first, yet now contained the depth of truths acknowledged and barriers overcome. As the spring breeze carried the scent of blossoming roses around them, Wilhelmina silently thanked whatever fate had brought her to this place, where a marriage of supposed convenience had revealed itself as her heart's true destination all along.